Oh, hello, everybody. Oh my gosh. How are we doing today? I don't know about y'all, but I just woke up from a really long nap. It feels so good. So hello, say hey as you guys come in. Let me know where you're coming from, whether it's Facebook, YouTube. I am so excited for this episode. Like, I'm really excited. I cannot wait. It's gonna be a good one. This is gonna be a good one. All right. So as you guys come in, say hey. Let us know how you're doing. How are you feeling this evening? How is everybody doing? It is almost Friday, you guys. Make sure you guys comment, join in. As always, I highly recommend commenting and joining in. This is your table as well, so feel free to bring your comments and thoughts to this table. And if you catch us on the replay, hashtag replay. And if you feel called to share this because you find value and you feel like somebody else will receive value, please, please, please share this episode for us so that I can continue bringing you more amazing women. So without further ado, I'm going to drop into my amazing intro here, my epic ass intro, and we're going to get this show going, y'all. All right. So hello and welcome to the TUF Woman Table. This is the table where I invite some super badass tough women like Lea here to take a seat and join in on the conversation to share her amazing story. At TUF Woman, I believe that all women have the power within themselves to live life authentically, free from fear, confident in who they are, and empowered to go out and create a life that sets their soul on fire. I share this belief by championing tough women who have walked through the fire, felt the fear, faced adversity, and kept pushing through it all. Women who now live the life they want is the woman they were created to be, and women who own their stories so other women can own and embrace theirs as well, because as we all know, and as you always hear me say, like every single time, when you give yourself permission to own and share your story, you give someone else the same permission as well. So all right, so without further ado, and because you have many titles, Lea, I'm going to allow you to yourself and explain your titles. So you guys, my guest, Lea Gerlock, and today we're going to talk about breaking the cycles of trauma along with her story. So without further ado, Lea.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yes, so my name is Lea. I'm a life coach. I actually specialize in transitions, big and small. And I'm an energy leadership master practitioner, which I'm going to explain all that afterwards. I studied at IPEC, and today I'm giving an adaptation of this transformational assessment from Bruce D. Schneider from IPEC. So just want to get that out of the way. So yes, I'm going to be talking today about the breaking the cycle of trauma and what's involved. I can't, get too detailed with everything, but I think that I will be able to give everybody quite a bit of insight to have an idea of what I'm talking about. So let me just start, and I'm going to be giving little bits of my story in between while we go through it. So it all started with being completely unconscious. That's how I'm going to start this, okay? And what I mean by this, and you'll understand after, is all of my experiences, they shaped who I was. They shaped my belief system, what I thought about myself, what I thought about others, what I thought about the world. And they were my reality. And I lived that. I lived by that, and I didn't even question it. But the truth is, I adopted those beliefs, and I just didn't know that. So I was leading my life believing things that really were placed upon me. And that was, whether it's parents or teachers, any influences in our life, pretty much. And so although I had many successes in my life, I was career woman, mom of 3 amazing boys. I was the hockey mom. I mean, I was this strong woman, not letting anything bother me. And I showed up in my life, put it that way. but I walked around with this void and I just didn't understand why. So one of the things that really sort of was like a red flag for me is that no matter what I tried, history kept repeating itself. Like I would always try to do better and always try to do better against myself, and all the judgments that I felt around me. But history kept repeating itself. And what happened was it eventually caught up to me. And I ended up in a really, really dark place. And I stopped showing up. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I was a functioning alcoholic. And then, like I said, it caught up to me. So really what I'm here to explain to you is that you don't have to stay in that dark place. Trauma comes in many different forms, okay? I was bullied as a child. I was known as the fat kid. And I can go on and on about stories like that. My self-worth had none. My beliefs about anybody that was overweight, you're not worth anything. There must be something wrong with you. I can't tell you how many times people were not even willing to try to get to know me. It was, oh, you have such a pretty face. It's too bad that you're fat. Like, so, you know, I was totally screwed up with my thoughts, put it that way. This transformational assessment, I call it the truth bomb. It's not the end all and be all. It is the beginning stages of becoming aware of what's going on. And with doing the deep inner work, you can get yourself out of that dark place. So the reason I call it the truth bomb is because it basically, it's like holding up a mirror to your face. It shows you how you're showing up on a normal day, like what's a normal day for you, and when you're under stress. But also a big one is the things you're not aware of, the unconscious ones, those deeply, deeply programmed thoughts that we have. So in order to break the cycle, there's 3 components, okay? And we need all 3. And what happens is sometimes we skip one. So I'm gonna go through all of them, a little bit of each one. So the first one is we can't change what we don't know. So we need to have some awareness, okay? And we need to see where we're giving our power away. So, like I said, the beliefs shape my views. So I'm going to actually now share a few different types of views, where some people might be at after trauma or what, you know, while they're going through it. So the first one would be that we are a victim to the stories that we're telling ourselves, that we're not worthy, that we're stupid, we're not good enough, and we are completely paralyzed by fear, shame, guilt, whatever comes up. I mean, we're just completely paralyzed in order to take any action. So we're giving our power away to stay in our comfort zone, sort of wash our hands. I lose, you win, and you stay there forever, okay? Another one, how people might view, you know, moving forward after trauma, is they have a lot of conflict, a lot of anger. They blame the world for everything. And so here it's not the self-judgment. You're just judging everybody else. And your motivation comes from this anger. So I mean, in one way, it's okay for survival. You know, if a bear's in front of you and you you need your survival instincts, okay, that's good. But really what happens is you're motivated to take action by this anger. So you can get things done, but a couple of things happen. You piss a lot of people off, and it's yeah, and it's short-term results, because what happens is you end up completely drained. Now, this one, I'm going to give an example of the unconscious thoughts that might be going on. So imagine you are going to have a conversation with, you're divorced, you're going to have a conversation with your ex because you're co-parenting. You think that you're showing up a certain way, and you think you're saying and doing all the right things, but really the energy behind really feeling is what comes out into that conversation. And we're not aware of that. So we're wondering, why is this one mad at me? And why am I not able to get this done? And why this and why? There's a lot of whys in there, because we're just completely unaware of how we're showing up, right? So that's one. So the other way is basically, it's a view of, okay, I'm taking responsibility for my thoughts and my feelings and all my actions. But truly what we're doing is we're rationalizing the past so that we can cope and just get by. So we are completely undermining how we feel. And again, we're left with a lot of questions, and we still have that void, right? The next one I'm going to share with you is where I was in this place a lot, actually. You have this genuine concern for others. You're the rescuer. You fix everything. You find the solutions. Everybody comes to you with their problems. But the tricky part here is, if you are over delivering and you're getting your needs met by or your self-worth by giving it all away, then you're actually giving from a place of lack. You're giving from those lower levels that I was just talking about, where you're a victim, so you need, or you're angry, so that one. And so then that doesn't end up working long term, because all of this is about A, where we're giving our power away, and B, having long-term sustainable results, because we want to go from where we are to where we want to be, but we want to stay there. You know what I mean? So in this particular instance, you may be wondering, why do I keep attracting the same people into my life? And the truth of the matter is that we may be attracting these people into our life because they're completing us, or we think that they can complete us. So what happens is we keep attracting the same people. Energy attracts energy, right? Like energy. So, so the last one I'm going to share with you around the awareness piece is, this is a nice place to be. This is where you've called bullshit on all the stories that you've been telling yourself. And you have this deep level of self-worth and self-awareness, and you're attracting people into your space with your confidence, and all you see is opportunities. I mean, it's a wonderful place to be. It's like a win-win place. Now, out of curiosity, if anybody's interested in answering, did anybody resonate with more than one of these views? Okay. Okay.
And hello to everybody. I want to say hello. Look, they're bringing people.
Okay, you answered. So what I'll tell you is, it's completely normal, because typically we will resonate in all of those levels every day, all day. But the key is that when we are at a much higher positive energy, plus all the tools we have in our toolbox and the awareness that we have, we don't stay in those lower areas. We're able to shift ourselves out of there. So that's the beauty of it, right? So the part that a lot of us skip is the acceptance. So a lot of us feel that, okay, cool, I'm aware of what's going on. I'm going to go take action now. And then they wonder why, when they take action, they end up right back to where they were. And so what happens is, if we skip this area of acceptance, a lot of people think the acceptance and forgiveness and all that is giving their power away. But this is actually the part where we gain ultimate control. So all the magic happens here when we are releasing all the stories that we're telling ourselves, and the fear and the shame and the anger and the guilt and all the stuff that's limiting us. So, and the reason being is because now we see the truth for what it is. We are not our thoughts and our emotions. We actually, through this assessment, we can see what's actually true. Because many times people tried to convince me of certain things, and I'd be like, there's just no way. There's just no way. Like, you can't convince me of that. And the truth of the matter is that going through this process, you actually get called out on it. Like, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I believe this for so many years, and it's so not true. The beliefs are so deeply ingrained in us, and it's a lifetime of living like that, that it does take a lot of work. We got to get rid of those limited beliefs and the stories that we're telling ourselves, and, assuming that, history is going to repeat itself. And so this is where all the magic really does happen, if we don't skip this. Because then when we're ready to take action, we're taking action in spite of fear. Okay. And what happens is that you end up knowing, so your desire, first of all, is stronger than your fear. So we're not saying you're not going to have any fear, but your desire is stronger than your fear. And so you just have this knowing that when you take action, all you're doing is gaining clarity on what's working and what's not working. You're not judging it. We're not judging our thoughts anymore, or we take a step back. We can just observe what's going on, check in with how we're feeling. We tend to avoid our feelings, which I know I did. I did that with emotional eating. And really, our emotions are our best friends, because they tell us what's going on with us. So then we don't end up getting sucked into that story anymore. But see, we're all looking for less stress, but the truth is we're looking for less of a stress reaction. Okay. So by not judging our thoughts and taking that step back and having the ability to check in with ourselves, we're giving ourselves the gift of conscious choice. So now we can respond versus having that stress reaction. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we're being triggered by somebody, because it's going to happen, we have this under our belt. We become so aware, and our life changes when we become so aware. And it ends up being a beautiful, beautiful life. Yeah.
I love that. And I was going to say, I like that you talk about the cycles now, because I think that there's not, we were talking about this a little bit before we got on here, but there's not enough emphasis on how deeply rooted these can be and how long you can walk through life with them. We walk around, I think, almost in an oblivious state sometimes. I know that was for me. And we walk around, I know victimhood was huge for me, and even at some point I thought, okay, well, I'm not victimizing myself anymore. But what I realized is that I was still playing victim to, I must always be in survival mode. Like, oh my God, I'm just always surviving. And I didn't realize that in and of itself was a belief. And then the the second part that I like that you talked about was the acceptance part. And this is one that I don't feel that anybody talks about. Like, I haven't seen it talked about widely. Actually, I haven't seen it talked about until I got into doing shadow work, which is integrating the equal parts of yourself. And I think that this is a really important one because this was something I did. So you talk about going from, okay, I've seen the behavior and I've acknowledged the cycle and it's bye-bye, and now I'm going to go take action. And what I don't give myself is that period to integrate what that means to me. Like, integrate, how does that actually show up in my life? So when we don't accept it, when you don't accept it, it's like you're really not accepting a piece of yourself still. You're going, oh, well, you're kind of okay, but we're just gonna pretend that wasn't a part of who I was, or because for me, my trauma when I was growing up was sexual. Well, that was part of it. And, for a long time, I didn't realize that the reason I was so promiscuous at such a young age was because of that trauma, and because I had this underlying belief that a lot of my value and stuff came from that, right? And I was unwilling to accept that piece of myself, that little girl that was looking for love but finding it in all the wrong ways, right? So I was like, it was almost like I was living two different aspects of myself.
Yeah, and that's actually that fourth level where we start searching everywhere and anywhere for somebody to fill that void. And so we become this person of service, and we allow people to take advantage of us because they're serving, a purpose for us. We have absolutely no boundaries. And, when we, like I said, I think I said this, that when we skip that stage, okay, actually, let me rephrase that. When I skipped that stage, okay, for a short period of time, I was okay. Like, I was like, okay, ready to go. Going to go do, my next big thing, whatever it was. And it was cut short all the time. And I just couldn't understand why. So now I'm thinking, okay, but I know what's going on. Like, I'm fully aware of the crap that's going on. So, like, what's the problem here? There's such a deep meaning, definition, whatever you want to call it, to the word acceptance. And I know it means different things for different people, about surrendering and accepting very difficult pasts. But it is within that inner work that we become free. It's within that hard work it's really hard. It's hard. I'm not going, it's not a cookie cutter part of the component, you know what I mean? But it's freeing, and it gets you to a place where you have all these opportunities to actually fulfill your desires, and you are filling your desires. You are not looking out at anybody to make you happy. And I'm living proof of that. And that's why I'm here, because if you would have told me a long time ago that I would be where I am today, I'd fight you on it. I would definitely fight you on it. There was no way out. And today I can tell you that there is a way out, and you can live a beautiful life. And, my self-worth is not based on your judgment towards me. Your judgment is all about you, has nothing to do with me. And so it's a very freeing place.
Well, and I like that you say that, because I think a lot of people, and myself, this was myself for a long time. So a lot of people walk around holding on to perceptions based upon other people's judgments, right? We take on perceptions of, oh, well, what will they think of me? And we create this entire story, and it leaves us sitting in that fear spot where we just can't operate at all. It's like, oh, well, are they going to think of me? And then it's like we take on and create belief systems within ourselves based on things. I can't tell you how many times I've met people who live entire stories based on what they think people might think or say about them. And none of it's true. None of it's true. And yet in their mind, they've built up this entire like dialogue, and it keeps them, allowing them to stay in their cycle, when the reality is, they are unwilling to really meet those belief systems head on.
Yeah. It keeps you small. It keeps you in your comfort zone. You stay there until it completely breaks you down.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what happens. It's just a given. It might be, a different method for each person, how it happens, but that's what ends up happening. And being paralyzed, what you mentioned, that's in those lower stages where you're paralyzed. You can't see past your fear and what people might think of you. It's all those judgments, but also what you think of yourself.
Well, and I want to take a second to talk about the emphasis on emotion and feelings and thoughts. I like that you talked about we are not our thoughts, because and I even want to go deeper as to say we are not our emotions. Like this is where I got messed up, right? We have a tendency to go, well, I feel I'm just so anxious, and we become that emotion, or we become that thought. Like, I don't know how many times I've caught people saying that. I don't remember where I heard this from, but you are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. Those are parts of you. And they're wonderful tools to dive deeper, which I think is neat that this assessment goes into that. But I can't, I had a friend, she's like, I'm just so anxious. Well, no, I mean, you feel the anxiety. You are not the anxiety. Like, you are not anxiety incarnate, but you feel it. It's something. And what people don't realize is how powerful that emotion actually can be for your self-discovery. If you feel anxiety, then you need to ask yourself, why do I feel anxious in this moment? What is coming up for me? And I think a lot of people really walk on autopilot all day long because they just don't want to deal. I know for me, one of my cycles was to stay busy, so I didn't have to deal with what I had going on inside of me. Just keep going, Ashley. Just do this. And I was telling them, hey, I would go and go and go and go till I would literally be so tired I couldn't keep my eyes open. So the moment I hit the bed, I would blank out and I wouldn't think anymore.
Avoidance is very popular. And yes, we are not our beliefs. We are not our emotions. We're not our feelings. And I have this method when I'm trying to make a decision, that if I'm having a hard time, it's like, okay, what am I thinking? And if I'm not really sure, I check in with how I feel about that thought, and vice versa. So if like something comes up for me, it's like I mentioned earlier, I take a step back and I think about, what's going on? Like, what am I thinking about right now that's causing this reaction? And that's the beauty of taking the step back, that you're not having this knee-jerk reaction. Like you're actually assessing how you feel with how you think, or how you think with how you feel. And then you take action accordingly. But you have that pause time to do it, right? Yeah. So
and I was gonna say, I don't think people really understand how beneficial the pause time is. We live, and you know what? I think that's done on purpose. I'm gonna say that we live in a society that says you must be hustling like 24/7. If you're not hustling, like, that's the belief that I can't stand that we push. If you're not hustling 24/7, then you're doing nothing.
Yeah. But again, you can't make those changes if you're not aware, right? You can't make that pause if you're so unaware of what in the world's going on with you. So you are literally living on autopilot, having these knee-jerk reactions to anything and everyone that comes in your sight, because everything is inside. You don't understand it. So you might be able to, show up okay, but when there's a stress or a perceived stress that comes your way, all bets are off if you have no awareness. and then do the inner work
Well,
for the acceptance, right?
and I was going to say, it seems like it takes in this day and age almost a catastrophe. Like, I'm going to use COVID for this. Look at what COVID did. And I'm not talking about the actual like scale of what COVID did. I'm talking about what the knee-jerk reaction it caused within people when everybody had to stop. Like, I can't,
Yeah.
like, oh
Well,
my gosh.
a perfect example, okay? A perfect example. Some people went through COVID being the victim of this virus, okay? Some people went through COVID being angry at the entire world that this was happening, or, in conflict with the fact that they had to be in isolation or whatever restrictions were on it, okay? Some people, they went through COVID with, okay, well, this is how it is. I might as well, just accept what's going on, completely avoiding and undermining their feelings, right? Then the other level, going through COVID, a lot of people were of service. But some people overindulged, did not set any boundaries with themselves, because being of service in a time was serving them. It was filling a need for them. We all have different needs, so I don't know which need, but it's a need, right? And there you go. I just took you through those phases with COVID. So depending on where you are at, that's how you're going to see events like COVID play out into your life, right? So now, like I said before, we do resonate in all the levels throughout the day, but with the awareness piece, like, sometimes something will happen and I totally feel like a victim. Boom, I snap out of it because I know where before I didn't know I was being a victim. I literally thought I was a victim. See the difference?
Well, and it's like I would say, you are only a victim of your, you may have been victimized in the past, but the only reason you continue to remain a victim is because you continue to allow that situation to have power over you. I can't tell you how many people I know, and like I said, myself included, that will walk around still holding on to something from 10 plus years before. And the other one that I like that you talked about is passive aggressiveness towards our own life. We think that, I'm just, there's a difference between going with the flow and being passive aggressive within your own life. Like, I want to talk a second about differentiating between that. And Roni, I hope I say that right, says, "You are amazing, Lea." Oh, look at that. When you are passive aggressive in anything, we think that means you're going with the flow and that's all chill, but that's actually another form of, I don't want to say victimization, but lack of responsibility for your own life. That's saying that, oh, well, whatever happens to me, and taking no responsibility for actually how your life is going to pan out. So that's another way that you give your power away, essentially, is by saying, oh, well, whatever happens. I have no control over it anyway. So it's just going to go upon its merry way. And people don't realize how incredibly powerful it is as far as setting the tone for your life, because basically that's you saying to life, like, all right, well, whatever you want to do, here you go. Just send it at me. I'm just going to take it and just deal with it.
Yeah. And then we complain later on, like, why are we miserable? Why are we not happy? Why do we feel lonely in a group of people? I used to be with a whole bunch of people and feel very lonely. Now I could be by myself and I'm not lonely at all. And some people don't understand it. But one of the points that I did want to make is that when I was in this dark place, I didn't see a way out. So I wasn't able mentally and physically to take responsibility for myself. And there were times where I was motivated by anger and I got things done. But like I said, they were short term because I only did it out of anger. And then I'd go back to like being the victim. And I think throughout the time, like you sort of flow in and out of all those, phases. But when it really got bad for me, I was already, done. I was done. I was ready. I was literally, I had succumbed to the thought that I was just going to die. And so when you don't see a way out, it's very difficult to take responsibility for yourself. And again, when you reach a place where I'm at, I don't place judgment on people that are going through that now. Yes, because I have experience in it, but I come from a place of no judgment, because if you're not aware of what's going on, then you can't have these expectations of yourself or anybody else. And everybody has their path. But I am so passionate about where I have come that if I could reach one person where, even if they don't feel like it's possible, and they hear me that it is possible, and I'm a life coach. I hold their hand, which is just in my natural, you know, uh, my natural personality anyway. But that's what I do. I hold people's hand and I walk them through every step of the way so that they can get out of the hole and stay out of the hole. Because that's the key, right? You want to stay out of there. And, when we look at life as, I said this the other day, we either win or we learn. Okay. So when you go at life looking at it that way, that there is no losing, because we're constantly learning and growing. So anything that we try to do, like I said earlier, it's just gaining clarity, what's working, what's not working, but there's no judgment. There's no self-judgment. There's not judgment on others. It's just like, okay, so what? Now what? Literally.
Well, yeah. I like that you talk about judgment too, because really, I was always told, and when I came, especially when I got like a little bit further along my journey, never to issue judgments, because people are already in their own prison of judgment. Like everybody's already walking around with their bag of judgments, and that's their prison. That's their cage. That's the cage that they live in. Yeah. And I think the second part of that too, for me, was always the reminder that people are simply a reflection for you, a mirror. So if I'm judging somebody on something, it's because I have something coming up in me that they're reflecting back to me. So that judgment on them is not a judgment on them, but really on the part of myself that I don't want to acknowledge, right? Yeah. So I'm sitting there and going, oh, well, I'm judging them on this, but really, you're judging yourself. You're judging yourself, and you might not see it that way, but you're judging some part of yourself that, back to the acceptance, you have not accepted. You refuse to allow that to be part of who you are. And, and the other part, and I think that you sum that up so beautifully, is that you walk through life with compassion. And I think when we go through this journey, especially the process of breaking our cycles, compassion is something that comes from it, because now you realize that you just don't know. You never know what a human being is going through, and when we're able to be going back to ourselves, when we're able to be compassionate with ourselves, which is that acceptance and that integration and that forgiveness, it allows us to be compassionate for other people. And I think especially as life coaches, I don't want to cast this as a judgment, but if you lack compassion for these people, it's going to be very hard to show up in the space that you want to show up in and serve them. I love that you talk about the one person, because that's, for me, that's this show. It's like, if I can just show up for the one woman or one person that watches this, and they find something of value that clicks a light on and gives them some form of awareness that changes something for them, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm walking in that purpose.
I feel that's exactly how I feel. And, It's about sharing your knowledge, experience, and your wisdom, um, and and being able to be of service from a place of giving people a gift of the same life that I'm living right now. Just
Mhm.
knowing, where I was, and knowing that all those years of myself being judged and thinking that I was the problem when really they're the ones that had the issue, but I took it upon as a personal thing. And when you live life like that, being unaware of it, and then you realize that, you step into this power of your own. And I'm not talking ego. You literally just step into this power of your own, of confidence, of knowing exactly who you are, what you were meant to do in this life. And so you could tackle any change that you want. So I'm taking you from where you are to where you want to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, you're helping people release baggage that's not theirs to carry. I think one thing you pointed
Yeah.
out nicely was that we walk around taking on perceptions that we think other people see us in, right? So we take on this baggage that is not ours to carry. So we walk around and we're like, God, this was one thing that was big for me. I feel so heavy. And the
Yeah.
reality of the heaviness is you're carrying baggage and energy that's not yours to carry. I think we're literally walking around carrying things that we don't need to carry, that are never our responsibility. And when you come to that realization that is no longer your responsibility to show up and provide happiness for other people outside of yourself, that in and of itself was freeing. There are times where I know people or I have friends and, things get said. And sometimes an old reaction of mine is to go in there and try to soothe things. Like that was my thing because that was a trauma cycle for me, and just soothe it and make it better, Ashley. And the reality is I'm not responsible. Like the biggest freeing thing for me is I'm not responsible for making that situation better.
Yeah.
Everybody's an adult. Everybody's an adult.
No, you're not. Sorry. Yeah, no, you're not responsible. For me, the part was that whatever people, people's opinions of me that I adopted, I lived my life really believing it. So because I adopted, there was no responsibility part, because I truly believed that what they thought of me was who I was. Absolutely, it wasn't who I was. But I just was like, okay, that's who I am. That's how my life played out. So I wasn't able to take any responsibility or not take responsibility for other people's, beliefs, because I wasn't aware that they weren't true. And that's where all this comes. We got to figure out what's true, what's not true.
Mm. Well, and I'll add to this because I was listening to JoeDispenza today, and who's like, I'm addicted to him. Like, I love his stuff.
It's
And he
amazing.
talked about how we start formulating, beliefs, our analytical mind. So that's how we see ourselves and view ourselves between the ages of 6 to 9. So when you're talking about these cycles, you're talking about things that have been deep seated for a very long time. I know people who don't go to church or don't do certain things because that they grew up with such a conflicting belief and view, and now they have this internal disconnect in between themselves because of what they were forced to believe growing up, and when they came into an adulthood where they had that conflict with their actual internal self and realizing that their belief system was different. The problem came and the disconnect came was because they were unwilling to accept that the person who was forced to believe this growing up versus the person that they are now, or they are unaware of, were the same people. So they could not bring the two together, and it caused that massive rift within them, and they walked around feeling incomplete and unwhole their whole life. and they're like, I don't understand why I feel this way. I feel so disconnected. And back to what you said about the pause, if we don't give ourselves pause, if we don't sit there and ask ourselves these questions like, well, why do I feel this way? Why when I'm thinking this, does my stomach come up in knots? Like,
right.
why? What's that connection? Because we often think that those two things also are disconnected, that the physical feeling we have within us has nothing to do with the thoughts that we're thinking in our heads. But really, back to Joe, your thoughts create your emotions create your thoughts. It's all symbiotic. It all works together. And I think the thing that I love what you talk about this assessment is it brings that mind, body, spirit connection into one place.
Yes, absolutely. It does. It does.
That's so wonderful, man.
It all comes down to the beginning stages, and that's awareness. You can't change what you're not aware of. Bottom line.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing, I want to point this out about trauma cycles, because this was a huge one for me, which I think is a beautiful space for awareness too. So one thing I learned when I started learning about trauma cycles, because for me, I was aware that I had a lot of trauma cycles, and that if I did not take care of my trauma cycles, my daughter was going to take them on, my children were going to take them on. And I think that this is a really important conversation, because I don't think people understand how deeply rooted these trauma cycles can become. These can become generational familial trauma cycles within your life.
Yeah.
And so then what I realized when I was doing studies, I came across things like epigenetics, where literally the cycle of trauma can create a genetic trauma, essentially, is what I'm going to call it. Yeah. So it actually can manipulate how your genes down the line of your family start expressing themselves. And so what's interesting is, like, if you were, let's say you were highly anxious mother, highly anxious, you had a really bad response with anxiety, and you were pregnant during that period, you can literally pass the symptoms of anxiety and that trauma onto your child. And now your child has trauma that's not even theirs. So that's the other part, and why I think it's so important to talk about breaking the trauma cycle, because sometimes we walk through life with, again, baggage that isn't ours, baggage that belonged to our mother or our father, and we don't realize it. We do not realize it. I did not realize that a lot of my worth issues that I had stem from the fact that down the line of the women in my family, there was a lack of worth. All the women in my family suffered from a lack of worth, feeling that they needed a man to complete them. And I don't say that as a bad thing, but again, like, back to that awareness, nobody was ever aware. This is not something that was taught to us. We didn't have a conversation about self-worth in my family and what it meant to be worthy of yourself outside of a human being.
Yeah.
It was always that you needed a man to be able to have a house and a family and do all the things. And, being a single mom now, I really realize that's not true. That's not true.
But it's a lifetime of believing that. So your life sort of plays out like that until something stops that cycle.
So back to the assessment, what was the biggest kicker? Like, what was the big aha moment you got that really made it, like, because everybody, I think, has an aha moment where they're like, oh my God, this doesn't make sense.
So the funny thing is, so when I took the assessment, I did it with some peers, and no word of a lie, it was when we all looked at how we showed up under stress, at least for me, I was like this. I was covering my head. I was like, oh my God. Like, I sort of knew that's how I showed up, but I didn't, like, it was in my face right now. And the fact that it was in my face, almost instantly, without even doing the work yet, I snapped out of it. I became so aware of when that happens to me that, boom, I get myself out of it right there. That for me was a big eye opener of how I show up under stress. And, how you show up on a normal day, you're pretty aware of it, but it was actually really interesting to see that I do fall into all the categories throughout the day when I, when things are normal. But under stress was a big one for me, big one. And like I said, I resonated a lot in that fourth stage. And so here I am, I'm always there for everybody. I'm blah, blah, like I'm just, it was just, I'm a giver, giver, giver. And when I really understood what that meant, now don't get me wrong, I was always giving from a genuine place, but I didn't understand the backside of it. And that is, I was giving from a place of, I'm hoping that that fills a need that I have, or some void that I have. And that for me was like a kick in the ass. It really was, because, my ego was, this is who I am. But when I realized that, it wasn't until I was aware of it that I was able to make any changes about that, or even like start the process of even understanding what I was doing, because it was all subconscious, right? And so, like I said, like I call this a transformational assessment, because these things changed my life when it was in my face, And like I said, that mirror to the face, it calls you on your bullshit. Like it really does. But it was very, very interesting when I, claimed that I gave so much of myself. But if it's coming from a place where it's meeting some expectation, some need, some void, self-worth, whatever the case may be, then you're going to feel constant disappointment. Yeah.
All right. So this is the part coming into it. And now, actually, before I go into that, I was going to say, I love that you talked about that, because one of my beliefs that I had to come to terms with and really accept so that I can move through it was that I poured into people so hard in the hopes that that would pour back into me, right? I poured into people, whether it was relationships or whatever, the savior complex, like a spinoff of the savior complex. I poured into people so hard, hoping that somehow that love would come pouring back into me instead of, and so I was literally pouring love through a middleman like this, hoping that somehow it's going to rebound and come back in. Instead, really what I had to do was take a step back and go, no, you need to do that for yourself first.
Exactly. Because then it's disappointment after disappointment. And you're wondering, like, what's wrong with these people? Why are they always disappointing me? They're never meeting my expectations. Well, because they can't meet your expectations. You have to meet your own expectations.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Like that should be a whole talk right there. You have to meet your expectations first.
That's right. No, but we want to co-create here. We want all the connections. We can't ever think that we have to do this alone, but you can't expect someone else to fill that void for you.
Well, and I always say is like, you can't expect people to, take you where you're not willing to go first. You can't expect from other people what you're not willing to give of yourself. So
Right.
It's just such a twofold thing. So, and Roni says, oh, there's a fan. So this is the part where I like to ask, if you were to give someone 3 pieces of advice in regards to this, of breaking the trauma, the transformation aspect of it, what would be those 3 pieces that you would give them?
Oh, first, trust your gut. Trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, go with it. It's very important. I never trusted my gut, and my decisions were based on what other people thought that I should be doing. So definitely trust your gut. The other piece is never, ever think you're alone. You are never alone. And always, always ask for help. I stayed quiet. I did not ask for help. Do not be ashamed to ask for help, because by asking for help, if you're not asking for help, then there's something to be ashamed about, because you're staying in that shame and staying in that comfort zone. but asking for help, never, ever be ashamed for it.
Well, and I was going to say that one, I like that you talked about that actually, because that was really big for me. So, if, aside from the shame, an inability to ask for help is an inability to receive. So when you cannot ask for help, you have a lot of times, and this one was for me, so I say this more to me, there is that underlying notion that you're not worthy of receiving that. And that really plays out for everything else, because if you're not worthy of if you don't believe that you're worthy of receiving help, then you don't believe you're worthy of receiving other things that will provide help within your life. So for me, learning to not only ask for help, but be willing to accept any help that came towards me was a huge awareness for me, because I realized that I was not open to receiving anything. And when we were talking about energetics and that frequency, those lower level frequencies, that's a low level frequency. Being unable to receive is a low level frequency. And so when people are unable to receive, you're not going to receive anything. That plays over into all pieces of your life, finances, the kind of relationships you want. So again, like Leah's been talking about, your awareness is so key, because you don't even realize how badly you could be self-sabotaging. You just don't see it until it comes up and hits you in the face. And I think sometimes it takes like a Mack truck smacking us into the face.
Well, and that's what even happened to me. Yeah. So it's like you have to hit rock bottom sometimes, and you feel that there's no way out, but believe. Just believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want you, this is the part of the show now where you get to tell everybody a little bit about where they can find you. If you want to tell them a little bit more about this assessment in case anybody wants to connect with you.
Yeah.
This is just best place to find you.
So I think that I left my email address and my Facebook link, and I have a website as well. There's a calendar on there. The assessment is a set of questions. You answer them, and I take you through a very detailed debrief and create some awareness. And then if you want to take it a step further, I work through everything that's limiting with you and get you to where you want to be.
Amen to that, you guys. And I can attest that I would definitely highly recommend reaching out to Lea. I think she's phenomenal at what she does. I really, really love seeing when there's such a personal story. I think as coaches, what I always tell people, especially when they're thinking about going into coaching, and they're like, well, what kind of coach are you going to be? And I'm like, well, look at the place where you experience the most pain and have the most support. And they're like, well, what do you mean the most pain? I said, because that's what you're going to coach on. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
The reason I became the coach I am now is because I went through that journey. I went through that pain. I know what it is to walk in those shoes. I know what it is to wake up and go, what the fuck are you doing with your life right now? I know that pain. I know how, and I know what it takes to get out of it. And so I always tell people, you got to recognize what it is that drove you to get to where you're at now, because that's the change you're going to create with somebody else, most likely. So props to you, man.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I can't believe it's already 8:30. Oh my God.
It's fun.
I said, I can't believe it's already 8:30, basically 1 minute to 8:30. That's crazy. That's crazy. And thank you everybody for being for joining in with us. I always am just so grateful for everybody that comes on. I'm so grateful for you. The one thing that this show has shown me, and all the women that have been on here, is how important it is to provide those spaces, just like what you're doing, providing space for people to come and bring awareness to what it is that they've gone through or been through. I think when we vocalize this, it's another form of awareness for us. When we tell our story, when we go through it, it's another layer of awareness for us. I know that every time we have these shows, I always am mirrored back some level of awareness that I'm not coherent of at the moment. And I'm going, oh my God. So I'll have light bulb moments while I'm going through the show. And I'm going, oh God. It's like when you were talking about, can anybody resonate with these? I'm like,
Yeah, that's pretty much how I was.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
Like my daughter was watching Grown Ups too. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Off here. And there's that guy in it, and that's what he does. He goes, what?
Yeah. No, but I was doing the hiding thing. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everybody's looking at you, and you're like, why are y'all staring at me? Like, do I got something on my face? It's like, do you not see it? But yes, everybody, please reach out to Lea. I can't believe how fast that passed. Like, I feel like we just started. But thank you so much again. I appreciate it. You guys, stay tuned for next week's panel. I really want to actually take a minute to highlight on this.
Yeah.
So next week's panel is all about boosting our immune system, so creating health holistically. I felt that there really was not an emphasis on how to boost our immune systems through this. Like, you know, we talk about distancing and wearing the mask, but you guys, nobody's talking about proper supplementation. How can eating better help you start reversing like all these things? So I bring together a panel for that. And then we are going to be diving back into domestic violence on our next couple panels after that. So you guys stay tuned for June, man. It's going to be a kicker. I'm excited. And as always, stay tuned for the stories that are coming up. I'm, again, really grateful to have everybody on here that comes on. This is not always the easiest platform. I mean, I hope I make it easy, but to share your story is a very, very authentic space to come into. And so I think it's a beautiful space for transformation, a lot like we're talking about. So I always appreciate everybody being on here. So, and thank you guys for the support. Please make sure you like us on iTunes, the TUF Woman podcast, and find us on YouTube. I didn't put the freaking banner up in Lord. Y'all, before we go, I was telling Lea, I literally just went home today, y'all. I don't know if anybody can resonate with this, but I went home and died today. I went to bed and I died, okay? Just died. I'm going to go back to bed here in a little bit. It's all good. So my brain is just, this is what happens. This is real life sometimes. Your brain just does not come on. So, all right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys on Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure you reach out to Lea. Connect with her. She can do you a world of good. If that is what you are struggling with at the moment, you will not regret it. So thank you guys so much. Have a phenomenal day and see you guys Tuesday.
Thank you.
All right.